All right, welcome to this week's episode of Vets and Real Estate Podcast. I am joined by another Naval Academy grad turned real estate, which I'm starting to think maybe the Navy Academy is doing more for real estate than anything else. Here with Travis, who's going to tell us about his journey and how he's moved on in real estate. So, Travis, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
So obviously you went Naval Academy. How did I'm sure getting that final acceptance was probably just surreal, realizing you're going to go to a military academy.
Yeah, I mean, people join the military for all kinds of different reasons, right? And, my unique story is I joined because I got recruited to play football. And, I guessed enough I guessed correctly on enough tests in high school to get good enough grades. And I was just fast enough, and just good enough athlete that I got recruited to play football at Navy. And growing up in San Antonio, David Robinson, this was in the late 90s, the height of, that championship run. It was an easy sell for them. It was like, hey man, this is where David Robinson went to school and played basketball.
Yeah,
Why don't you come here and play football and follow in his legacy? I was like, oh, that sounds awesome. Yeah. So really, that was how I got into the military. That's my story of why I joined. Seriously though, I knew it was just a great organization. I had, I got great parents who were just like, dude, you have to take this opportunity. You're going to get an unbelievable education, an unbelievable network, and you'll have leadership experience. You'll walk right into a leadership, role when you graduate. You got to do this. Well, they didn't, force me, but they heavily
sure.
encouraged my decision. And yeah, it was a great experience. I majored in quantitative economics when I was there. It's the closest thing they had to a finance degree. I didn't want to be a math major because I mean, what do you do with a math degree?
Sure.
Quantitative economics sounded great. Met a lot of great people. Had fun playing football. We were 3-1 against Army my time there, so always had that hang that over all the West Point guys' heads. And again, I guessed right on enough tests that I was eligible to start the nuclear power program
Mm.
pipeline. So I got accepted into that. I became a nuclear engineer, and really honestly the reason I did that was there was a $10,000 signing bonus, and when you're 21 years old, dude, I'm gonna be rich. Can you imagine
Right?
DVDs I can buy with 10,000? So, so I became a nuclear engineer, and this was in 2003 is when I graduated. So it's like we were
Okay,
talking about before we started recording. The op tempo back then was pretty different. We went
sure.
graduation, 30 days off, straight to the ship. We gone, you know. And I spent 2 years, just about 2 years, on a big deck amphib, the LHD-5 Baton.
Mm.
Um, Made a deployment in 2004, and got all my warfare qualifications out of the way. Then I went to nuke school. Then I went to the George Washington to be a nuclear engineer for a couple years, and that made up my 5 years. And I just, I didn't want to be a nuclear engineer, during my whole career there. So I always kind of wanted to get into business and finance. And I can't really explain why. I think it was just the exposure to financial markets, just always it was fascinating to me. And so I got out in 2008, but didn't really know what I wanted to do, how I was going to get in there. So I went to a bunch of job fairs, started an MBA program at UTSA, and met a West Point grad through that program who helped get my foot in the door at USAA. And that's
Mm.
really when my civilian career took off from there. At USAA, I spent about a decade at USAA, climbing the ranks, became an executive before I departed. And then, once you reach a certain level at a financial institution like that, I just kind of, I didn't want to be a compliance officer for the rest of my life. And there was another executive at USA who kind of had the same feeling and was like, dude, why don't we just go? We've learned a lot. Why don't we go try and do this ourselves and jump into the entrepreneurial world? So we were those two, executives with good paying jobs who were like threw it all away to go start our own company, from scratch. Everyone's like, what are you doing, man? Like, you're going to start your own mortgage company? You guys are crazy. It's like, well, we'll see how it works. So we went and did that. My co-founder, his name's Tad Hensley. So we left USA together to start our own company. I'll kind of skip through the details, but we very quickly got reintroduced to the prior president at Zillow. His name's Greg Schwartz. He was starting
Mhm.
a mortgage company just called Tomo. So we joined forces with him and helped get Tomo going. Um, Around that time, my longtime mentor from USAA became the CEO at Keller Williams. And Keller Williams at the time wanted to build mortgage companies for all their top agents and brokers. And, he's talked me into coming to Keller Williams. I mean, the opportunity to work for my longtime mentor and Gary Keller, couldn't pass that up. So went to Keller Williams for a couple of years to build mortgage companies. Tad, who I had left USA with, stayed at that startup. And then after a couple years, we decided, hey, we're tired of building companies for other people. Let's build our own.
Yeah.
We left USA. So we left. I left Keller Williams the same time he left Tomo, and we started Novum Home Loans together. Just about 2 years ago now. And
Mm.
yeah, we started off. It's always a windy path when you're starting a company, but Novum Home Loans is, we describe it as a tech enabled mortgage company built for the military community. And we are mission driven with the mission to provide advice and guidance to the military community through their home buying journey. And that's what we do now. And Novum is, yeah, it's been a blast. It's been fun and a lot of lessons learned along the way.
Yeah. So there's so much to unpack and all that. Um, so my journey wasn't terribly different. I got in the military, went to UTSA as well. Um, I went to the undergrad side. You went to the graduate side. How was it coming out of the military, going into graduate school? Because we hear that quite often from our officers that have gotten out, go back to grad school, then go find a career after that. What was it like showing up that first day on campus at UTSA and saying, "All right, I'm a student now. I'm no longer a naval officer." What was day one like?
Yeah, great question. So I went through what was called the exec, or what's still called the executive MBA program.
Hmm.
So it was designed for really people like me, who had a working, who were already into their careers, had a family, and it was every other weekend type of
Hmm.
program that lasted 2 years. So we were we were in our own little cohort. There were, I don't know, 25, 30 of us in that class. And so we all were in the same, like we'd show up and be in all the same classes together as a cohort. And that was now that it's funny you mentioned that, but it was kind of similar to a military experience, where
Hmm.
you're all going through the same thing that sucks together, and so you learn how to band together. Whose strengths can we leverage for different projects, and we really just we stay in touch. That was, my goodness, 15 years ago. Went through that program, and there's still a lot of us that stay in touch. And through that program is how I met another veteran who helped me, get my foot in the door at USA. So it was just very, I guess now that I've never thought about it that way before, but now that you bring it up like that, it was kind of similar to a military cohort, kind of group.
Yeah.
Everybody just kind of, you're in the same crappy situation together. So you're able to, you just kind of get used to it together and help each other
Yeah.
along the way.
Yeah. Were there any cultural things coming out of the Navy that was just drastically different for you that you just really didn't expect or didn't, kind of going into university? And I know for me, I came back, I was 26, two deployments, divorced, vastly different than my 18-year-old counterpart that was sitting in class, drinking as much as they can because mom and dad's not there. And
Man,
my
I remember.
interaction was drastically different. I would assume, having been to graduate school myself, it would be a little different, but I would imagine there's still a bit of a culture shock.
Where I felt the most difference, so to be clear, when I transitioned out, I had a full-time job as a contractor. I was working at Fort Sam, or whatever
Mhm.
it's called now, as a contractor while I was going through the program. But that transition, from military to civilian life, everybody's got their story of like when it was different. So my first week on the job, we were, in this boardroom, lots of, like, with the presentation, there's 20 people around this conference room table. Everybody's got binders out and we're going through plans and programs. And the clock's ticking. It's 5 o'clock, and just right on the dot, everybody starts closing everything up and packing things up and leaving. And I'm there. I'm not used to the military lifestyle. Like, dude, we're here until this is done. Like
Sure.
I was expecting, like, hey, we're gonna have to sleep on the couch, and just kind of. And it was. that was kind of the first realization I had in the civilian world that, oh man, this is, I get to go home every night. I get weekends off. I don't have to ask permission, from my command,
Hmm.
take vacation. This is pretty, this is different. I got a lot more freedom and flexibility here. And over time you just kind of learn more of how that transition, affects you. And man, this is great. We got air conditioning in the office here. It's like you take for, everybody that the things that everybody else takes for granted. You don't, because you have
Yeah.
that military experience. So
So from that, you got a role where I think, at least in San Antonio, especially with the military community here, USAA is almost one of those that everybody strives to get hired. You actually got hired. How was that transition? Because at least from what I understand, there is still a lot of, I don't want to say military tradition, but it's very similarly
yeah.
ran with kind of organizational structure and those kind of things, the military, obviously corporate, but how is that transition now out of contracting out of the Navy into USAA?
Yeah, and this was in 2009, 10, when I was
Hmm.
working there at USAA, which was a different culture than it is now. But I remember, I kind of became part of this group at USAA that helped other transitioning military because USAA was trying to hire more military at the time.
Right.
And so I was part of a program that helped mentor them along the way. And one of the biggest differences, or one of the things that I tried to help those transitioning straight from the military into the civilian world and at USAA was the speed in which decisions are made. Where, in the military, especially in the operational military, when you're on a ship or you're deployed, it's like, you have to be decisive. The worst thing you can do is not make a decision. So command and control, like it's a very
Hmm.
fast-paced decision-making culture, and it's purposeful. And when you're in the civilian world, it does not have the same pace, that decisions are made. You analyze things and you build presentations and you socialize, make sure every group knows what's going on. And, people call that bureaucracy. But at a big company, you start to understand why all those different organizations exist. And it's because USA is a like multi-billion-dollar company with like if they screw something up, there are serious consequences. So to make any sort of changes, you got to really refine things and test things. And I think that was the difference in culture of moving from a very fast-paced military operational day-to-day type of mindset to, oh man, like this project isn't going to launch for 12 months maybe
Hmm.
if everybody says yes along the way. And just getting used to that culture and like that's your job now. It can be shocking to a lot of folks making that transition.
So when you started with USAA, what did you start right in mortgage, or I think you mentioned you started more in marketing?
Yeah, good question. So, yeah, so at the time, USAA had a strategy to create a one-stop shop for anybody who was looking to purchase a home, right? So this was right at the beginning before Zillow and Trulia had really taken off, right? So
Hmm.
the idea was you'd come to USAA to search for your home, and you'd be exposed to, hey, here's mortgage rates. USA had a real estate referral program with real estate agents. You can get a homeowner's insurance quote, all the things you would need to
Hmm.
buy and move into a home, refinance if you wanted to. And that experience, it was called Home Circle at the time, was led out of the marketing organization. And one of the things that I picked up on pretty quickly was, well, man, in the home buying experience, the mortgage experience as a sub part of that is really what kind of makes or breaks whether things go smoothly or not. And so as I started to just learn more about how the home buying process worked, the mortgage part of it is what really caught my attention. It was like, well, why does it work that way? Why is that like what like why do why do all these things work this way? And it just kind of pulled me into the mortgage banking side. And next thing I know, there's a role that opens up in, the mortgage department. And I'm like, hey, I'm gonna go do the mortgage thing for, and learn and fix all these things. And years later, I'm an executive there in the mortgage organization. But that was kind of my started off in marketing, but it kind of pulled me into mortgage pretty quickly.
So from your time in the Navy, you'd never thought real estate. That was never the goal. That was never the thought. You're just like,
It
I
was
guess I'll
really
go
more,
back to school and see what happens.
yeah, it was really more. I knew I wanted to get into business and finance, but I didn't know what that meant. So was it financial planning? Was it banking?
Mm.
Real estate? I was kind of thinking, like, I didn't know what I didn't know about it. but when I discovered and started to learn more about the mortgage business, that's really like that just kind of drew my attention. The joke is nobody tries to get into the mortgage business, but once you're in, you're in. It's like, yeah, I don't know anybody who's like, yeah, I spent 10 years in mortgage and now I'm out. Like once you're in the mortgage business, you're in the mortgage business. And it just felt like it kind of checked all those boxes for me where there was some financial acumen. Customer experience was really important. So there's a marketing and a consumer angle to it, all the different partnerships that you need. Like it's very complex. So
Mhm.
I think being a nuclear engineer, my brain's always kind of wired like process and engineering focused, and that in the mortgage process is really where I could just kind of visualize. Like it's funny, I like when you're a nuclear engineer, one of the first things you learn is, all right, how does it go from a drop of water in the ocean into the nuclear reactor or through the how does that you got to know how the whole system works, right?
Mhm.
And that's kind of how I viewed the mortgage process. All right, someone comes in and they call, like, "Hey, what are your mortgage rates today?" How does it go from that all the way until they get their keys, and can move into their home? And it's just it's a unique product, a financial product that drew my attention. I think for that reason.
Yeah, I can see that. And I think there's a lot more. Of course, there's not regulation on the brokerage side. There is, but I think in the mortgage side, there's a lot more regulatory things. And if you're doing VA versus FHA versus traditional, or I was going to say SB, I'm a commercial guy. Sorry, if you're doing USDA or whatever the case happens to be, right? They're each of them have their own handbook. Each of them have their own rules. They all have their own process, and I can imagine that gets either unbelievably frustrating or you absolutely just love that process that goes in.
Yeah, joke. Coming from nuclear power, I just had to find the one industry that was more bureaucratic and slow. Nuclear is not in the mortgage business. But yeah, I think, it's because it's laid out and it's so complicated, and for all those reasons that you described, it's just like there's just been lots of things that happened to the mortgage industry over the years, and even since then, we've had Dodd-Frank, we've had all these different now we have technology, and AI and all these different things that just get thrown into the pot, and it just creates a lot of complexity, and I kind of like that about the industry.
Yeah, I can certainly see that. So you spent roughly a decade at USAA, and then what most people would have said, "I'm staying here till I retired." You decided to step out with another executive, and instead of having a nice W-2 and the corporate income and retirement and all those things, you decided to leave it and then go start your own business.
Yeah, I think I again, I don't know why I had that entrepreneurial itch. I think it was just more of it comes from a competitive mindset. So now it goes back
Mhm.
to playing college football, and just like I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it. It's like why anybody becomes an entrepreneur is you just have this desire to like, can I really do this? Can I jump out with no safety net? And I'm glad you brought up, Jen, my wife, because her support through this whole process is unbelievably important. And if she didn't support me, I don't think it wouldn't have happened. And so, when my co-founder and I, when we decided to leave, it very much was, hey, is your wife on board with this? Is your family on board? Like you have to have that type of a conversation of how much savings do you have to, because like money's not going to start flowing in day one. How long can we sustain ourselves? What are we trying to get out of this? And so I was lucky too that I had some really good mentors. And what I learned through the Navy, being a junior officer, right, is what's the most important. Like the person that's going to make or break you is your NCO. You better shut up and listen to your NCO, because that's like if you think you outrank your NCO, you're going to have a bad time in the Navy. And
Sure.
so I always just kind of had that, like somebody knows something more than I do in this industry. And so when we jumped out, we reached out to all the everybody that we knew who was doing what we were talking about doing, and they gave us some great advice as to, hey, you need to have these hard conversations with your wife, with each other. Why are you doing this? How much money do you have? And at the end of the day, you're betting on yourself. And like you have to have that mindset of just, I'll figure it out, and we'll be all right, and that confidence is what, being surrounded by people who believed in what we were doing is was unbelievably crucial.
So was your wife immediately like, "Go do it, baby, you got it," or was she like,
I think she was. she could just see that the corporate world was kind of grinding on me,
Mm,
and I was at that level where I was, working till, 12-hour days and traveling and why? It was like, it was you kind of get in that position, and this isn't just at USA. This is like any, you get that
anywhere.
stereotypical golden handcuffs, right? He's just, man, like is this going to be the next 20, 30 years of my life is just like grinding it out as an like being comfortable, right? So it's like it's
Sure.
hard to, like yeah, you make enough money, but not enough to like be, to have the freedom. And so it was that freedom that I always really, I think I always wanted, and that my wife could tell, that Jen could tell that I wanted it too. And so it was her support, through the process that really just helped make it happen. So she was very supportive. And I think it's because she saw just how I was mentally ready for something other than the corporate world.
Yeah, it's interesting now that we've done. I think we're on 30 odd episodes or something like that at this point. It's interesting because this is a question we ask relatively often, especially for those that are married, how that process works. And it's interesting where some are like, we see it, we see the vision, go for it. It's we've found it to be interesting that that relationship with a spouse is so important, especially when you move out of the corporate world and into entrepreneurship, because you're on an island at that point.
Uh, uh, I mean, you're bringing up spouses in this in the context. I mean, it's just first off, they are the most undervalued and underappreciated part of the military community. They have the hardest job.
Hmm.
In the
Oh,
military.
absolutely.
We're gone. We're surrounded by people we know, and we're doing a job. They're just like running the house. Don't know when they're going to get a phone call from you. Don't know exactly when you're coming home. Like just the stress that spouses and that support system, like they don't get nearly the credit they deserve.
Mm-mm.
And then just that type of, I think, with Jen, to her credit, she's just always been supportive of me. And she, I think, it, I feel, you reciprocate that support. So so, through my path, when I left USA, we started our own thing. And then I ended up at Keller Williams building, companies.
Mhm.
And that exposed her to becoming a real estate agent, and she's been a real estate. So through that process, she actually became a real estate agent. And dude, she is just her personality is just built for real estate. She's never met a stranger. She's not afraid to call anybody. She's not afraid to have any conversation. She's very organized and has,
Mhm.
sales follow up. And I had always like joked with her. I was like, babe, you'd be the best real estate agent just because like you're always on the phone. You're always talking to everybody. We go to the grocery store, 20 people there. Like everybody knows you, like you should like direct that in a way. And so when she saw, I think really when she saw the impact she can have on people's lives and like helping them buy or sell their home. I mean, like
Yeah,
rest
yeah.
like you are much more of a mentor and therapist than you are a transactional coordinator through the process, right? And so I think that just fit in perfectly. That's with her personality, and she's been crushing it for the
That's
last few years that she's been doing it.
that's awesome. So obviously you got wife on board. What about picking the partner?
Yeah.
'Cause I think that's another thing that in my world I see this all the time where two agents decide to come together, they're going to partner, they're together, they're happy for 6 weeks, and then the first thing that comes up, and at least they're not forming a company, they're forming a real estate team, which is drastically different. But you guys both left corporate jobs,
Yep.
a whole nine yards, to go start a business together. How did you vet each other?
So it just kind of naturally, first off, we had the same mindset, right? We
Mm.
both knew the risks we were taking and we were on board, because we had those tough conversations early. And it's funny, like so the whole journey started. We were the two mortgage executives who would work out in the USAA gym at 5:30 in the morning. And, it just like, you just find yourself talking. His name's Tad Hensley. So Tad and I would talk, and we'd find ourselves in the locker room just chatting about how we could build a better mortgage company. Why aren't we doing this at USA? It's for all these different reasons. Well, screw it. Let's go do our own thing. Like,
Mm.
like we know, like here's the like we let's put. So it took like several months of us, writing it out, building our own strategy deck, and like, all right, dude, we're gonna go do this. Yeah, let's go do this. And to answer your question, I think it's really important first off to make sure you find somebody who has the same mindset and same culture that you do. But just as important is we complement each other with our skill
Mm.
sets. So I'm very much the marketing, biz dev, sales, front end of things, how to grow the company. Tad comes from capital markets and technology. So all the back end stuff. And we just naturally know, like I know I don't know capital markets or technology nearly as well as Tad does. Tad knows he like marketing and biz dev, sales, like he's not gonna do it. He doesn't want to, doesn't know how. So we just kind of we knew that as we went into it. It's like, hey, like I do this, you do this. I fully trust that Tad knows what he's doing, on
Mm.
the operational side. Tad fully trusts that I know what I'm doing on the growth side. And that like trust and relationship, because we complement each other so well, has been like unbelievably important. And I think if we brought in somebody else who like mimicked our skill sets, it wouldn't work as well, because one of us would be stepping on the other person's toes. So I think
Yeah.
like having that complementary skill set is crucially important. After of course the typical checks in the box of mindset, culture fit, and those types of aspects.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I think it's interesting so often that we see this where people try to come together. What Dave Ramsey's got a quote that says the only ship that doesn't float is a partnership, right? It's that partnerships usually, don't last for a myriad of reasons. And yours lasted for a little while. You guys took a break and did some other things and then came back. I mean,
Yeah.
was that always the plan, or was it just you guys both got like great opportunities, and or you got the opportunity with to move
Yeah.
on with Carl and all that over with KW? Was that ever part of the goal, or does it just kind of happen, or how did that? I don't want to say break up because you guys are back together, but how did that conversation go?
I wouldn't say it was planned, because we at that point we had the entrepreneurial mindset of, all right, dude, like we're just going to go these two different directions. And like so we Keller Williams is based out of Austin, Tad's in Austin, so we were, when I was up there all the time, and we'd go have breakfast or lunch together, where we
Hmm.
wanted to, and like we would always keep in touch. And you know I it's not like we planned it to happen, but the timing just kind of worked out to where, all right, I'm like, I've been doing this Keller Williams thing enough, and it seems like the course is, it's run its course. At the same time that he felt that way at Tomo, the company that, he was at.
Hmm.
And so it's not like we planned it from the beginning, but it just kind of naturally, progressed over the next couple years where, all right, like now and here's the thing, man, Novum would not be where it's at right now if we hadn't had those two separate experiences.
Hmm.
So I think when we left USAA to be entrepreneurs, we weren't really ready. And I think jumping in, going to Tomo and going to Keller Williams, like and being and kind of being more of jumping out of like the top of the fountain and being like, you're very influential, but you kind of have a little bit of a safety net because there's money, there, and like
Sure.
really helped us learn how to be entrepreneurs for the next couple years, so that when we were ready to join Novum, or I'm sorry, when we were ready to start Novum, I mean, it's just been, we really leverage all those experiences and those lessons learned from being at Keller Williams and being at Tomo.
Yeah. So, what was it like actually working with Gary Keller?
Oh man, he that's tough to summarize. What I would say about Avery is he is his vision. There are very few people that I've ever worked with who can see around the corner like Gary Keller can.
Mhm.
And I think there's a humility in his approach to things. It's not like anything that he does or says is overly complex. But you go to family reunion, you go to you listen to him talk, it's just he has a he's able to simplify a very complex, fast moving industry. And I think
Yes.
that simplicity is what people seek from him. And
Yeah.
he does, like, he's got an unbelievable vision, and he surrounds himself with people too that just like kind of, it's not that Gary Keller has like many gaps to fill, but he surrounds himself with people that kind of help feed into his ability to have that vision. And I think that's just really what I learned from him, is there's a decisiveness too
Mm.
that he has, of like, he's not afraid just to, hey, we're going all right, it's not working, let's go over here, and again, just observing how, one of the best entrepreneurs in the world, how he makes decisions on a day-to-day basis, and how like he's always paying attention. He's always forming an opinion, and he's not afraid to ask questions also.
Mm.
So like when you're in the room with him, like the questions that he asks is, and that's what I've learned along the way, is like great leaders and great visionaries ask really good questions. And he would ask really good questions that you're like,
Yeah.
"Man, like I thought I really understood the, how this works, but now that you ask it that way, and he's able to reframe things. And I think it's
Yeah.
just the ability to kind of simplify complexity and fast moving parts is really like that's what I noticed is and he's just humble. He's just like he'll describe himself like I'm just a real estate agent and figured it out. And so
Yeah.
that's what he does too at Keller Williams. That's like the whole like this agent does it this way, this person does it this way, they do it this way. And so that's what he does is he brings all those people and all those best practices and just shares, at the end of the day, education and training is just sharing best practices of what other people do. It's not him
Yeah.
coming up with the idea. He's just seeing like he's just giving a platform to the successful people and helping them be more successful by giving them the
Yeah.
resources they need.
Yeah. I would say from my time at being at KW, I got to have some, not one-on-one, but small group time with Gary. And I was always fascinated because, again, he could draw anything on his whiteboard. He could explain anything as he draws it out, right? It was fascinating. And to watch how, again, you mentioned it, taking extremely complex things and making them as simple. All you got to do is 4 steps. You got to take the world apart. You got to put the pieces together, put the world back together the way you want. I mean, unbelievably complicated stuff. And I know that was one of the things that I wish I had more time with him. And I'm a little envious that you had the time that you had the time with him. Was there anything that you took away from your time with Gary that just absolutely just changed as you move back into the entrepreneurship side that has just kind of changed, the way that you guys are now running the company now versus when you guys partnered the first time?
Um, yeah, I would say, I mean, first off, I just learned a ton about how agents think. And so that's the
Hmm.
other thing that Gary understands is he is able to, he is an agent at the end of the day, and he can get into agents' heads, and and know how they think. And that is one of the biggest things that's really helped us with the mortgage side is like how is understanding that. But from a leadership perspective, I would say the simplicity in his vocabulary, it's always easy to understand what Gary's talking about. He doesn't
Yeah.
duff you with BS, right? And so, it's that Will Rogers quote. Any any idiot can can make something seem complex, but it takes a genius to make something seem simple. I totally
Right.
butchered the quote,
It's
but
something like that. Yeah. I know which one you're talking about. Yeah.
yeah, and that's what he does. Like he just makes everything seem so simple. And so that's what I try to do now with Novum. And when we generate content for agents or for clients, simplicity. Like just give them, like make it simple to understand. These people do not understand the mortgage jargon. They don't understand the lingo. Gary Keller doesn't even understand it because he doesn't want like it's irrelevant. Like he's able to like cut out the BS and just get to the point. And so in the communication and the way we communicate things at Novum is really derived from what I learned at Keller Williams and
Mm.
then how Tad and I make decisions too. I mean, it's just like you feel it in your gut. Yeah, at the end of the day, you gotta keep swimming as an entrepreneur, and just keep moving. You can't get paralyzed by fear and making the decision. Just make the decision and go and just keep like success is that jagged line to the top. It's not a straight line. That's what I saw firsthand is how Gary just keep moving, man. Just keep trying to get to the vision.
Yeah. So now you guys are with Novum or starting Novum. What was it? Where was the idea, I guess, to come back together and then build another company? And then, I mean, obviously, you knew you worked together. The vetting was already there. You guys all both had great experiences to build something better than you had the first time. So what was that conversation like?
Yeah, so when we were ready to start Novum, and Novum is Latin for new beginning, right? And so that's
Hmm.
kind of where the name derived. And we knew there were a ton of inefficiencies, and there's plenty of ways that we can fix the mortgage process, right? So which one, like, what are we going to do? And honestly, it took a little while of us like figuring out like where are we going to focus, and so okay, first off, we got to give good advice, but you can't just be another mortgage company that gives good advice, has great rates, great service, blah blah blah. You're like no one's going to care. And what we realized, as we're again leveraging our mentors, you guys come from USAA. Like, why don't you guys know what it's like to build a mission driven organization? Like, and there's something, and for me, what I always felt with Novum was anytime I would talk about VA loans or anything that can help the veteran community, like I was just, man, that's what I like to do. Maybe we create like a special military part of Novum or like maybe that's it becomes like a department where we're really focused on the military, and our advisors and mentors are just like, no, guys, go do that. Go be the type of mortgage company that you wanted USAA to be, because you can control everything. And so as we started to really look into that opportunity from a business perspective, less than 20% of veterans have ever used their VA loan, yet veteran households are more likely to be homeowners. So there's a huge, like, that those two stats don't line up.
Right.
Like, there's this education and advice gap that we have in our community, in our amongst the military community. And then you start looking, well, who does this well? Like, you got USAA, Navy Fed, Penn Fed, you got, like, they're all call centers, and they're geared towards operational efficiency. They're not really geared towards providing advice, right? All the military focused mortgage companies. You do have some great individual loan officers out there in the community who are great at providing advice, but they work for an organization that only 10% of their production is VA loans. So, there's a disconnect in the mission between the loan officer and the company they work for. So, when we started, thinking about where Novum fits, we fit in right in between there, right? We're a tech enabled mortgage company built for the military community. We are mission driven, right? And we saw firsthand, Tad and I did, the importance of having a clear mission and getting 33,000 employees at USA rowing in the same direction. That is like that's the type of company we want to build. Everything we do is built on the mission to provide advice and guidance to the military community through their home buying journey. Every feature in our technology, every decision we make, every event we do is geared towards heading in that direction and letting that mission guide us, because we know that that's going to lead us to success. That's going to differentiate us in the market, and that's going to help us be fulfilled to know that we're building something that's not just a mortgage company making money and efficient. It's actually accomplishing a mission and scratching that itch of for us to be able to be doing something meaningful.
So how scary was that, the decision to turn around and say we're going to ignore the 96% of other home buyers and to focus on, I'm assuming 3 to 4% of the
Yeah.
population that would buy a home. I mean, how
So
scary is that decision to go ignore the majority? We're going to find this small group of people and just focus on them.
here's what we also learned at USAA. While USAA focuses on the military community, only about 60%, 50 to 60% of their production is in VA loans. They still do a lot of conventional and other type of loans, right?
I know that.
Yeah, and so what we learned is by focusing on the military community, that helps us stand out to the agent community and to the veteran population, right? But we to be clear, we will help anybody looking to purchase a home. We're
Sure.
providing guidance, and we know that provide like having that mission and talking about that mission is what's going to help us stand out in the community. And there's a lot of non-veterans or family members of veterans who also need our help, and we'd be more than happy to help them. Right? Like, our mission, as long as we're providing advice and guidance to the military community, and we do that through VA loan seminars, through our educational content, through our videos, just helping aid. We can't accomplish our mission by ourselves too, right? So we do a lot of VA loan seminars for agents because we need them to know how VA loans work so they can go
Sure.
out and tell their clients. Well, that's going to naturally bring in not just veterans, but lots of other people who, and to be clear, the VA loan may not always be the perfect product for a veteran. I mean, if you're National Guard, you you may not be eligible for a VA loan. So there's lots of, that's, we knew that from our history at USAA, that focusing on the military community doesn't mean that you're necessarily like like neglecting everybody else. And it's also that, it goes back to that, you got to be different in your market, right? And being here in San Antonio, like Military City USA, a military focused mortgage company, was going to help us. Like, it's a I don't want to say target rich environment, but it's a
It
military,
is.
like, target rich environment, and it helps us stand out from all the other loan officers who are out there trying to tell agents we give great service, great rates. Hey, no, Novum, we're mission driven. We want to provide advice and guidance, because we know if that's what we're trying to do, it's good. Like, the deals are going to come.
Yeah. And I think that's that's important because that's one of the reasons why I loved USA as much as I did for the longest time was that, especially early in my interaction with USA, you could call them, somebody would talk to you, they'd walk you through everything. I felt like I could call them, get all the information, and it didn't matter if I went to somebody else or not. I
Hmm.
got the information. That's not to trash USA, but that's changed. That's
Yeah,
not necessarily the culture that it used to be from there. But it sounds like you guys are kind of picking up what that USAA culture used to be. Let me guide you through everything. Make sure you have all the information. Here's the smartest decision. If you were my kid and I was trying to work through this, here's what we would look at, as much as license law and all that kind of stuff allows. It looks like you've taken that idea and just continued, but adding the tech. How does the tech play into what you guys are doing?
great question. So, a lot of technology in the mortgage space is built on becoming more operationally efficient. You hear a lot about, AI underwriting, all those things. Like Tad and I have a belief that's you're pointing technology in the wrong direction in operations. You got to point it in the sales side of the funnel. And so our
Mm,
technology is built again to help us provide advice and guidance. Who can provide advice and guidance the best? It's a loan officer who knows VA guidelines, who can like talk to agents. That's a human type of interaction. And so what we do with our technology is it helps our loan officers be more efficient with all those little tasks that they have to do. Like who do I call next? So what it does is it takes in all of the data that and all the conversations that our loan officers have, pulls insights out of that and tells the loan officer, hey, call this person for this reason to do this thing. And it even automates some of those tasks for them so that our loan officers can provide more advice and guidance. Again, it goes back to the
mm.
mission, right? We're focused on building technology to help free up humans to do what humans do best, and then using technology to do what technology does best, which is just manage the transactional details and the things you don't need humans to press buttons and to do, through that mortgage process.
So, and you mentioned AI, you mentioned a lot of things that are just rapidly changing on a regular basis, right? I think even ChatGPT, they're saying that I know for me it's gotten super slow now when they're talking because it's five is coming out, that it's constantly changing. How, as a business owner who has built kind of a core competency of technology as well, how do you guys stay ahead? How do you guys work on implementing the next level of technology, or do you just kind of keep it if it works and go from there? Like I think as a small business owner, that's hard to figure out. When do you change technology? How do you work through change management? How do you do all those things? And how are you guys managing that?
So a couple things. First off is because we're starting from scratch, we don't have the legacy systems and all the
Mm,
technology that is so hard to update. It's different building something from scratch than updating all the systems that have been in existence for 30 years. So that alone is a massive advantage for us. From an AI perspective, what we say is like AI, use AI for what AI is good at. And right now, what is it good at? It's good at it can listen to a conversation, provide a transcript, summarize that, pull out some insights, suggest them to like, hey, is this the right thing to do next based on this 20-minute conversation you had? Yeah, do that next. And so using technology for that reason instead of what do most people have to do? You have to hire an assistant. If you're not using like the only other option you get is like hiring another human to do those things that technology
mhm,
can do. Well, that's expensive. Now you like, and so then that like another way to scale is you just got to hire more humans to be transaction coordinators and do all those types of things. So we use technology like in a purposeful way. We use AI for what AI is good at, right? And that's right now where AI is good at. As AI develops, we have enough flexibility in our system to adapt and to continue to build and leverage AI, but we're not trying to, we're not trying to get out in front of ourselves with, technology. Just the fact that we don't have all those legacy systems gives us a a massive advantage in just
sure.
being able to use the most cutting edge technology and bring it in real quick. We're a startup, right? So we can still like we can test things and we can do things unbelievably quicker than a lot of our competitors can do.
That's interesting. It's great insight because I think technology is one of the things that every brokerage, every bank, every company struggles with, even entrepreneurs, and what technology to bring in. Where I mean, even changing things like CRMs was just a pain because
Yeah,
you're like, I've used this for the last 3 or 4 years. I like it. I know it. I know this other one does more. That means I got to learn the new one. And then
yeah,
I'm bad where I had to go out and hire the assistant to turn around and help me build everything and learn the system because I knew I wasn't going to learn it. So it sounds like you guys are at least trying to be ahead of the game and not ever get caught in those legacy systems as best you can. I mean, eventually I'm sure at one point that's going to be part of the struggle, but at least now that you guys are at least doing the best to not make that the issue.
One of the first things we did, so using our technology, one of the first things we did is we built a system for our loan officer, or and our processor. Everybody can kind of see all the conversations around a transaction. Like it was all recorded, right? All the phone calls, all the text messages, emails, everything was like we were the like that was one of the first things we did, right? Is built a phone system that could capture all that data.
Mm.
And that alone, like where does so first off, where typically does a loan officer and an agent do their business from? It's from this thing, right? Your personal cell phone.
Yeah, yeah.
Personal cell phone, you're not all that stuff. What does it require? It requires like you have to manually go in and summarize the conversation. Or you have to hire somebody to listen to your conversation, or you have to do it face to face. It's like it's very manual to get that. But the fact that we created that technology system, that communication system early to capture all that information, gave us the data to find insights out of all the things. And do you know how many
Mm.
conversations? Well, you'll find this fascinating because we couldn't believe it. Do you know how many conversations a loan officer has with a around for a to get a lead when a client first talks to a loan officer until it closes? Do you know how many conversations the loan officer is having around that deal over
I would
that?
say 36.
You're almost off by a factor of 10. It's
Oh, wow.
over 200 conversations. And a conversation is anything like it could be a back and forth text exchange, or it could be like, oh, not a voicemail, like a face.
Mhm.
But think about it. A loan officer, you haven't talked to the processor. If you have a junior loan officer, you got the borrower, you got a co-borrower, you have the buyer's agent, you have the seller's agent, you got title company. Like all these different conversations have to happen along the way. And if it's happening on your personal cell phone, that why do you think the mortgage process is so screwed up? It's because like
Mm.
you can't keep track of all the conversations like that happen along like the mortgage process is built on conversations. So the fact that our technology captures all that and we have that data allows us to like provide insights and pull out insights like, hey, it takes 250 conversations, dude. There's no way you're going to keep track of this unless you leverage like technology. Hey, here's the next thing to
Mhm.
do. Here's the next thing to do. Here's why you need to do it next. And so that like foundation is really what's starting to set us apart and give us the advantage, to separate ourselves on the experience side for our
Yeah, and I can imagine on that side too, if there are mistakes, you start to catch them early, you start seeing trends and things that are different. Just the analytics of what you guys are probably collecting is just probably mind-blowingly great. And again, if you're focusing on that, you
yeah.
just make that a core competency and keep improving.
Yeah.
That's exciting stuff.
Yeah, it's
So
been
I would say as we start to kind of wrap up, sorry, as we start to kind of wrap up, usually the last question we ask is that if you were sitting down and talking to the Travis 2008, getting ready to leave the Navy, do your contracting gig, is there anything that you would have told yourself to do different or you would want to do different? Obviously, every lesson's important, but what would be that one lesson that you wish you maybe didn't learn nearly as difficult or you wish you learned faster?
leverage your network. I think that is I was doing it, but I wasn't consciously doing it nearly as consciously as I'm doing it now. Coming from the military, I mean, you're just like we're just wired differently as an organization and as a network. And you can reach out to any veteran and like you'll just naturally help each other different. Like it's just in the civilian world, it just doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
But I didn't learn that until like for several years. I eventually figured it out. And like there's just so many people that are willing to help. And there's so many veterans who have such a wide range of experiences and who have done whatever it is that you're trying to do before and are more than willing to give you like, hey, here's what I learned along the way. Do it this way, don't do it this way. And that is like really what we've been leaning on with Novum is leveraging entrepreneurs that I know, from the Naval Academy who like have started and sold companies. All right, dude, like how do we structure our operating agreements the right way? How do we like it's like, oh, don't do it this way. Make sure you have this. It's all the like leveraging that network for all those different things, marketing, sales, operations, technology. Like there's somebody that knows all those. There's a veteran out there from your network that has that type of experience. Reach out to them And I wish I had like realized that sooner. And but eventually I figured it out. Like most things, is it just took a little while, but I eventually got there. But if I could go back to 2008, I would have more purposely leveraged my network.
I love it. That's great advice, and what you're saying is absolutely true. I can't think of how many times I've either had people reach out to me or I've reached out to, and just the ability or willingness to just here's everything. Here's what I learned. Here's the behind the scenes or a playbook. Don't tell anybody. Here's what we should have. Here's what we could have done. Or you're absolutely right. I great advice.
Yeah.
Well, Travis, thank you so much for your time on this one. We appreciate it here, and hopefully, if anybody is interested in going to the mortgage side or working with you guys directly, I'm sure you're more than happy to chat with them through all that. We'll make sure we get your socials and all that kind of stuff out there so that anybody who's interested to reach out can absolutely reach out.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you so much.